todos y gracias para Discoveries por la oportunidad de hablar sobre de Reyna Silver. Típicamente, donde hay una presentación de CRDs y con la persona apellido de Megaw, es una persona más grande y con una piel diferente de mío. Un otro diferente de mi padre, Dr. Peter Megaw, mi padre es muy bien en español y obviamente mi español necesito más practicar. So the rest of this talk is going to be in English to be less uncomfortable for you and for me. And I'm going to be talking to you guys today about Reyna Silver and about our ore systems approach to exploration in historic districts, particularly in Mexico. Obviously, we're going to be making forward-looking statements. It's important for you guys to do your homework and all of that. Our focus is on high-grade, big-scale projects. We're looking for the kind of thing that can make money when silver is at whatever your personal worst nightmare is and is big enough that it can survive multiple market cycles. We look for projects that fit through that filter. And in particular, we look at historic districts where we think that previous discovery or previous mining has been looking at just a portion of the system. What we're looking for is the next big piece. And I'm going to fight with the clicker here for a second. We have 3 projects that we think fit through that filter. And we have an exploration team led by our technical advisor, Dr. Peter Megaw, as well as the boots-on-the-ground geos, including Rene Ramirez and Jorge Carrillo, which are up front here, who have been serially successful in taking this ore systems approach to exploration and finding some big things. And it's because of that, and it is because of our CEO, Jorge Ramiro Monroy, and his work on the capital market side that we have had the access to capital that has allowed us to drill and continue drilling all 3 of our projects. So we have Batopilas, Gigi, and Medicine Springs. Batopilas and Gigi actually originated with mag silver. They had Batopilas, Gigi, and Juanicipio. Juanicipio is obviously in production now and is a huge silver deposit. Mag decided that Jorge Ramiro Monroy, our CEO, was able to get Batopilas and Gigi from them to get some exploration going, to get them into the limelight. And I'm going to focus primarily today on our 2 projects in Mexico, considering where we are. Particularly in the southwest corner of Chihuahua, we have Batopilas, which is Mexico's historically highest grade silver district. It was actually a native silver district. And we've gone in looking for more high-grade silver, and we found some. But what we also found was significant gold mineralization. So we took a pause on drilling. We said, let's do the geophysics. Let's do the sampling. Let's do the structural studies that we need to do as a big-scale exploration company to find that next portion. And so we're actually going to be taking all that data that we put together in the last year, and we're going to go drill those targets here in the next couple of weeks. Our other 2 projects are carbonate replacement deposits. In particular, we have Gigi, which is at the heart of the Santa Eulalia district, which is one of the world's largest carbonate replacement deposits. Produced 500,000 ounces of silver from the distal portion of the system. The question in the Santa Eulalia district has been, where is the source? Where is the proximal scar? And how much bigger could this thing be? And all the data shows, look in Gigi. So that's what we're doing. And if you guys want to look at some core, we do have some outside as well. Our last project, which I'll touch on right now, but will be less of a focus in this talk, is Medicine Springs. Medicine Springs is up in Nevada, and we're taking the model that was developed in Mexico, the style of exploration that has found some of the largest carbonate replacement deposits. And we're taking that style of exploration, we're taking it up to Nevada, and we're having some real fun up there. For technical advisors, we have my father, Dr. Peter Megaw, known for his work with both Exelon at Platosa and Mag Silver with Juanicipio and Valdecañas in Cinco de Mayo. We also have Doug Kerwin, who is famous for his work on porphyries, particularly Hugo Dummett ore body at Oyotogoy. We also have a great team who are running our projects here in Mexico. We have Reyna Ramirez, who was right there alongside my father when he was mapping Juanicipio and discovering those first drill holes where they found the Juanicipio veins. On top of that, was also working alongside him with the discovery of Platosa. We also have Manuel Ruiz, who runs our Parapilas project, and he was involved with Cinco de Mayo. So the guys who are boots on the ground geos, they have been part of the team, as it were, the boys are back together. Our CEO is Jorge Ramiro Monroy. He's actually based out of Mexico, or was born in Mexico. He's based out of Hong Kong, and that gives us a really interesting access to capital. So, to get into the geology, now that we're done with the corporate side. One of our focuses is on carbonate replacement deposits, and in particular, an ore systems approach to CRDs. CRDs, you've got an intrusive that's got acidic mineralized fluid that's coming off of it. That acidic mineralized fluid interacts with your carbonate unit, your limestone, your dolomite. You get that paper mache volcano, acid-base reaction, pH changes, the goodies precipitate out, and that happens again and again. And as a result, you end up with these continuous zoned high-grade systems. Another way that I like to think about CRDs, in particular as a way for people to wrap their head around it a little bit easier for those who are non-geology fluent, is I like to think of them as if they're a public transportation system. So you have that, you have your source, the pink blob, and you can think of that as being like your bus terminal. And you have these routes that go out. And as the bus leaves the route, different elements are getting off in different areas. You have your proximal scarp. That's like your downtown area. You're going to be higher in copper and gold, lead, zinc, silver. But your silver grade might be a little bit lower than as you get further out into the system. When you get into your chimney mantos, you can think of that as being like your suburbs. So your silver grade goes up, you get a little bit more structurally controlled, and that is sort of the typical, when we think about a carbonate replacement deposit, when we think about the Santa Eulalia district, the suburbs is what you're thinking of. And at the very end, that's when the elements that fell asleep on the back of the bus get kicked off. Another component is that a CRD is a replacement system. So whenever those elements get off the bus, a carbonate, a calcite, gets back on the bus, and it carries along with it some hitchhikers, manganese, lead. And one of the beautiful factors that we get in exploring for carbonate replacement deposits, and one of the things that we've identified over the last 40 some odd years, is the presence of what we call fugitive calcite. Because when you take a black light to that calcite, if it is part of that replacement interaction, if there are hitchhikers involved, it glows hot pink, and that's what gives you that barbecue rock, and that's why it's used as an indicator in exploration. The other component in terms of thinking about CRDs as an ore system, or as a public transportation system, is that you don't typically have the cartoon model of one route of mineralization going out. Instead, what you get is these hubs and spokes, right? You have different routes going out, and then if you think about them, you get those different neighborhoods. So this is actually a public transportation map from the city of Hamburg. And if you look at that green zone, it actually lines up with the CRD mineralization at Bingham Canyon. Because Bingham Canyon, despite being known as a large copper gold deposit, It's actually surrounded by a series of base metal silver deposits that are around it. And so this is the style of approach that we take with Reyna Silver is instead of looking at each piece as if it was sitting alone, we're approaching it as a full system. So you look at something like Bingham Canyon at the top there, where you have everything from the porphyry all the way out to the most distal portion of the system. But then you take that to something like the Santa Eulalia district, where I'm going to fight with the laser here. Maybe I will win. Nope. Where the East Camp and the West Camp, the historic portion of the district, that was the suburbs that produced that 500 million ounces of silver. So the question there has always been, where's the source? Where's the proximal skarn? Where is the other half of the spectrum? Because from what we know studying CRDs, it has to be there somewhere. Or you take it to what we're doing with our Medicine Springs project, where we see some of the most distal portions of the system. We're in the right host rock type. Okay, there's potential there based off of the geochemistry that we're seeing for that full spectrum. And so when we talk about an ore systems approach, this is one of the driving factors behind our project selection and behind, the reason why we're going where we're going. So, to talk about our big project, Gigi. This is in the Santa Eulalia mining district, which is near Chihuahua City. That's actually the reason Chihuahua's where it is. Produced 500 million ounces of silver with better parts of 8 million tons lead and zinc, average grade of 310 grams per ton silver, and 15% combined lead zinc. Big deposit. That all came from the distal portion of the system. So where is the other half? And based off of the work that's been done, in particular by my father, Dr. Peter Megaw, with his work on his PhD, actually in the Santa Eulalia district, the data suggests that it comes from the Gigi area where Reyna Silver is exploring. So that spaghetti monster over there on the left side, that's actually the schematic of the historic Chimney Manto systems. That big L-shaped red spot, you could fit 2 Eiffel Towers sitting on top of each other in there. These are big systems. Gigi itself is hiding underneath pre-mineral volcanics. And so these are blind targets. And one of the things that is developed, as I mentioned earlier in response to the fugitive calcite component, is we can identify near misses now. And that also allows us to vector through the system. So when you intersect different pieces of mineralization, different textures, you can go, okay, here's where I am. These are the directions that I need to vector. And on top of that, what we're currently doing at Gigi is we're trying to find the source. We're trying to identify where that bus terminal is because we know where the distal portion of the system is. It was mined. So now we can work the 2 ends against the middle. And on top of that, how many big public transportation systems have you been in that only have 1 or 2 bus routes, right? You get multiple, you get this hub and spoke effect. So what we've done so far is at hole 28, we intersected a never before seen quartzite rhyolite, the bottom portion of which is replaced by sulfides. And we stepped out from that beautifully zoned sulfides, by the way, seriously, go check it out. Lead, zinc, silver, copper zone, another zinc zone, the kind of mineralization that tells you that you're getting close to the source. So which direction do you go? We're trying to pen in the source of the system, that bus terminal. So we went 650 meters to the north, 770 meters to the northeast, and over 1 kilometer out to the east, giving us a 0.5 square kilometer footprint with the same style mineralization at depth. Okay, now we have the ability to vector our way through the system. And that's that pink down there below. Another thing that's interesting to us is sitting on top of that is about 1,200 meters of some of the best carbonate replacement host rock out there, the Lagrima and the Finley formations. And within that, about 450 meters to 750 meters are what we call feeder bleeder structures. So these are either going into or out of those chimney mantos that are what makes CRDs so attractive. And so one of the things that's developing is in this recent drill program that will come up sometime this year, later in the year, excuse me. We're continuing to look for the source, but we're also trying to see if we can identify and follow some of these systems, because CRDs are continuous and they're fractal. So can we follow some of what we're seeing up above, and could we find additional upper level mineralization while we're still looking for that source and for that proximal skarn? So here's some examples of some of the results. If you guys want to look at the core in depth, I will mention for a third time that it's out there. But here's an example of that 55 meters of skarn mineralization with that beautiful silver, lead, zinc, copper, and secondary copper or zinc zone down below. So I will skip that slide today. Our other project is Medicine Springs. I'm going to just touch base on this briefly. We're taking that same style of exploration and we're taking it to Mexico. If you look at CRDs worldwide, they've got about 13 key features that are associated with the big ones. When we first went out to Medicine Springs, we saw 10 out of 13 before the first drill hole. We went, whoo, we should take a look here. The big ones are you have to be in an area where you could potentially have a source intrusive. There's got to be a porphyry or something like that in the area. So we're near Ely and other big porphyries out in Nevada. You also have to have carbonates. You have to have room to grow, because we're not wanting to mess around with something small. We're looking for something large. And we want to see high grade off of the top. The other components that you see here are indicative of that bus leaving that terminal, multiple packets of mineralization going out and reacting as many times as possible. And these are features that tell us, yes, that happened. And part of those are because of these big jasperoids that we see that are running northeast through the system. We tested them because they gave us a beautiful window to what was going on at depth. And what came back was absolutely exquisite copper, lead, zinc, silver zonation, with silvers in our jasperoid coming back of upwards of 400 to 1,200 grams per ton silver. So we did some reconnaissance holes at Medicine Springs because, one, we wanted to know, did we have enough carbonate for this thing to get big? Did it belong sitting alongside the great silver deposits like Badapilas and the Santa Eulalia district? So our first hole was nearly 800 meters, and we spent almost the entirety of those 800 meters in carbonates. So our question of does it have room to go? Check. Our other question was, is there high-grade mineralization? In that same hole, we had 2.4 meters of over a kilo silver. We had stepped out 1.75 kilometers to the southwest into another area, hitting mineralization again. So Medicine Springs proved itself, but it should be something that we focus on as well. Belongs alongside the other two. And we'll be drilling here this summer. The last project we'll talk about is Badapilas. I absolutely love the Badapilas district. In particular, how can you not love a district that produces a photo like this? This is 1 month's production in 1906. That's 325,000 ounces of fine silver. The main ore mineral at Badapilas was actually native silver. They produced 300 million ounces from 30 known veins. And what they would do is they would chase these little skinny veins and they balloon out over the course of a couple of meters to be, the full structure would be 3 to 5 meters across, the mineralization 0.5 meter to 1.5 meters of native silver, 30 to 80 meters on level, and chasing them for hundreds of meters down. In the 1950s, a group came in and decided to do a tunnel with the idea of let's come in below. And the mineralization kept going to depth. 1913, the dam busted apart, the claims broke up, and it wasn't until the 90s that those claims were able to be put back together so that we could take that ore systems approach to exploration. So where you see that purple jog, that purple L shaped, that's the Porfirio Diaz tunnel. And what we did is we said, okay, we know there's high-grade silver there. How much bigger is this district? So we went up into the northeast following structures. where we intersected high-grade silver, over 10.5 or over 3.5 meters of over 790 grams per ton silver, as well as some gold. We were not expecting to see gold. And then as we further stepped out into the northeast, in hole 34, we intersected 36 grams per ton gold. Well, this is getting interesting. And then in hole 42A, we intersected over 3.5 meters of over 8 grams per ton gold. So when we discovered that we were running into mineable widths and grades of gold that we were not expecting to see in a different style of mineralization. The silver hangs out with calcite, the gold's hanging out with quartz. But considering the fact that both of them are using the same kinds of structures, it provides us with the opportunity, through better studying the gold and its relationship with the structures, to leverage that understanding against the silver mineralization and potentially find more of the silver and potentially look towards more consistently finding that silver mineralization that made the Batopilas district so attractive. So what we've done now is a big sampling survey, detailed geophysics, and a detailed structural study. And putting all that data together, and the idea is hopefully we can find more of this style of mineralization and better lock in how to consistently go after it. And one of the things that we have done is we found a whole new gold zone southeast of the district, and we'll be following this up in the next couple of weeks with drilling in the historic district. So we've got 3 big projects. Batopilas, we found silver, we've also found gold. We're taking that good work that we've done in the last year, turning them into drill targets, and we're going to be testing them. At Gigi, we were doing detailed geophysics, putting those pieces together alongside the ground truth and the nearly 20,000 meters of drilling that we have. Put those pieces together and design our drill targets for what will be phase 3 of drilling later in the year. And then at Medicine Springs, we're currently flying geophysics out there. Take that with the reconnaissance drilling and additional boots on the ground geology, pull those drill targets together and test those as well. So that means that we'll be drilling 3 projects and definitely keeping us busy over at Reyna Silver. We've got a market cap of about 40 million. We raised 8 million in February, and what that allows us to go do is drill, hopefully find something big. And I realized that I talked faster than I thought. So if anyone has any questions, comments, concerns, or jokes, either find us over at the Core Shack or you can ask now. Yeah.
For all you CRDs, like there is some osseous or type of carbonate rock.
I'll go again with this thing. All right, in terms of CRDs and their host rocks, is there a specific sort of carbonate facies or type of carbonate rock that tends to be the best host to these deposits?
Typically, we like to see a limestone. One of the things that's always been, great about the Santa Eulalia district is that you have this homogeneous, large-scale limestone, but we also see that dolomites do well. Essentially, one of the things that you're looking for is there to not be too much contamination of silicates, because silicates don't like to be replaced in the same way that carbonates do, because it's that acid-base reaction.
In terms of sort of reef facies or macritic facies, is there a strong control, or we don't know, or?
That is the preferred bed discussion. And there are people doing their PhDs on that. We're also doing some work actually as part of the MDRU carbonate footprint study. I've actually got a student that will be working on that project with Gigi, and because it is one of the big questions. And also, how do you see the alteration halos on these as well?
Nice talk. Batopilus, we like this area. It's beautiful. Maybe I should ask you this question personally, but do you think there's two events or just one or
Yes,
and type of deposits?
Geochemically, it looks like we're dealing with at least 2 mineralizing centers and mineralizing events. We're actually seeing at least 2 geochemical signatures even within the gold. But considering the silver's hanging out with calcite, the gold's hanging out with quartz, those look like they're probably different events. But as you know, when things get big, a lot of times you end up with overprinting of multiple styles of mineralization on top of each other.